Hello everyone, Ian Smith here with fedsmith.com, and I'm here to talk to you today about the 2027 federal pay raise. And I know that might sound a little bit weird because I'm recording this in early August, and it seems like kind of an odd time to be talking about next year's pay raise. That's still, almost half a year away. But August is a very important month for the pay raise process, and I'm going to explain why in today's video. So every year around this time, federal employees start asking the same question: what's my pay raise going to be next year? And every year the answer doesn't actually come down to the budget. It comes from a letter that the president has to send by the end of August. And that's why August is key. This year, that letter matters more than usual because right now the budget says that the proposed raise is zero. And I'll explain why a little bit more here in just a moment. So here's where things stand currently. The White House's 2027 budget proposal includes a 7% pay raise proposal for military personnel, but it does not mention a raise for civilian federal employees at all. And so consequently, a silence like that usually gets read as a pay freeze. And if it holds, this would be the widest gap between military and civilian raises that we've seen in years. The current average federal employee salary also, just as a reference point, as of May 2026, according to data from the Office of Personnel Management, is $112,141. If you put it in a table, then the trend is hard to miss on the gap between the military raises and federal employee pay raises. Back in 2024, military and civilian raises were in precise alignment. But every year since then, the gap has widened, and 2027 could be the biggest gap yet. That's exactly the kind of comparison that pay parity advocates lean on and expect to hear it made louder and more often this year than in years past. And pay parity, just so you know, is an argument in favor of if the military is getting X amount of pay raise, then federal employees should get the same raise. But a 7-point gap is a much easier argument to make than a 3-point one. So why does August matter so much? I mentioned that this is an important month in the overall pay raise process. Back in 1990, Congress passed FEPCA, FEPCA, that stands for the Federal Employees Pay Comparability Act, which set up an automatic formula for pay raises. However, no president has ever actually let that formula play out. It would result in a raise that is way too large. Instead, the law lets the president override it with what's called an alternative or alternate pay plan. And that letter is legally required to go to Congress before September 1st every year. That's the deadline driving everything that you're about to see. And this isn't a new situation. In fact, we just went through it last year. Last year's budget was silent on a pay raise for civilian federal employees as well, so a pay freeze was the expectation. However, on August 28th, the president's letter came out and it contained an unexpected surprise. It authorized a 1% base pay raise, but with locality pay frozen. And a second surprise that letter contained is it proposed a higher pay raise for some federal employees. Law enforcement personnel got a separate 3.8% increase to match the military. The freeze that everyone expected did not happen, in other words. And that's actually the pattern going back to President Trump's first term. If you take a look at this list, you'll see that nearly every year starts with a proposal for fiscal restraint, sometimes even an outright freeze, and ends with a modest raise once the letter actually comes out. 2019 is the clearest example. A pay freeze was proposed. 1.9% was what was delivered, though, after Congress got involved. In 2026 followed the same script almost exactly. And 2019 brings up an important point to keep in mind with the pay raise process as well. Congress can override with legislation any raise that the president proposes. This does not happen often, mind you, but it can and sometimes has, as 2019 illustrates. And because of this, whatever pay raise that Trump ends up proposing in 2027 will not be the final number until the process fully plays out for the remainder of the year because of that possibility of congressional intervention. The number gets finalized within an executive order that's issued, and that's typically in mid to late December. So what is a realistic pay raise that you could expect for 2027? There are 3 scenarios on the table: a full freeze is possible, but it would basically require Congress to sit back and let the budget stand as written. This is what usually happens, as I said before, but with the large discrepancy between the proposed military and civilian pay raises for next year, that could motivate Congress to act. A small raise, somewhere around 1 to 2%, is the most likely outcome based on the recent pattern. And a bigger raise in the 3 to 4% range is possible, but it would need a real push from Congress to get there. And there are a few things that could change the math here. There's a bill in Congress right now called the FAIR Act, FAIR, that proposes a 4.1% raise. It's more of a negotiating position than a likely outcome because it has never become law in all of the years that it's been introduced. But it shows that there's pressure from the other direction. Congress can also legislate its own number instead of accepting the president's plan. And with a midterm election coming up, inflation, the pay parity argument that I mentioned, and ongoing retention concerns, there's more than one reason that this could end up happening. Here's the bottom line, though. A quiet budget has never been the end of the story for federal pay. Not last year and not in Trump's first term. The real number comes from the alternative pay plan lever, due by the end of August. History leans toward a small raise rather than a true freeze. But I want to be clear, I'm not making a direct prediction here. It's a pattern that I'm highlighting. We won't know for sure until that letter is issued, and once it has been, the possibility does still remain that Congress could change it before the end of the year. Now, as soon as that alternate pay plan letter comes out, we'll have the full breakdown for you, what it means for your paycheck and how it compares to what history has predicted. And if there are any other breaking updates in the pay raise process, we will definitely be sharing them as soon as they happen. Also, I've included some links in the description below to articles with more details about all of this, so please be sure to check those out. Thank you for watching today, and I'll see you in the next video.